Ambassador Hannah Kim walked slowly across the polished floor of the Galactic Council chambers. Her black shoes made soft clicking sounds that echoed in the vast room. Behind her, tall windows showed the bright stars of the galaxy spinning slowly in space. Today felt different. Today felt heavy. The Valerian delegation sat in a perfect row, their crystal bodies catching the light from above. They had just joined the galactic community last month. Like all new species, they needed to learn the rules. Most rules were written in big books and stored in computers. But one rule was never written down anywhere. It lived only in whispers and warnings. Hannah stopped in front of the crystal beings. Their environmental suits hummed quietly, keeping them alive in the oxygen-rich air that most species breathe. She could see their faces through the clear helmets. They looked curious but also worried. Good. They should be worried about what she was going to tell them. "Welcome to the Galactic Council," Hannah said. Her voice was calm but serious. "You have learned about trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and diplomatic protocols. But there is one more thing you must understand. It is the most important rule in all of known space." The lead Valerian, who called himself Crystal Singer of Dawn, leaned forward. His voice came through his suit speaker with a musical quality. "Ambassador Kim, we have studied all the available documentation. What rule could be more important than the non-aggression pacts?" Hannah took a deep breath. "Never harm human children. Not one. Not ever. Not for any reason." The crystal beings looked at each other with confusion. One of them, smaller than the others, spoke up. "But Ambassador, humans are just one species among thousands. Why would their offspring be more protected than others?" Before Hannah could answer, a deep voice rumbled from the shadows at the back of the chamber. Elder Counselor Vrex emerged, his ancient reptilian form moving slowly but with purpose. His scales were dark green with age, and his yellow eyes held the wisdom of centuries. His species, the Draconis, had been among the first to encounter humanity 300 years ago. Because, Vrex said, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air, the consequences of breaking this rule are absolute. Crystal Singer of Dawn's light flickered nervously inside his suit. "Elder Counselor, surely you exaggerate. One species cannot threaten the entire galaxy." Vrex's laugh was like gravel falling down a mountain. "Young crystal friend, my people learned this lesson when your species was still forming in tide pools. We thought as you do now. We were incorrect in our assumptions." Hannah nodded gravely. "The details are lost to classified archives, but every elder species remembers the outcome. When human children are threatened, humanity changes. They become something else entirely." "What do you mean?" asked another Valerian. "They become what they were before they chose to be civilized," Vrex said quietly. "And what they were before civilization was the most dangerous thing the galaxy has ever seen." Far across the galaxy, on a small blue and green world called New Sol, none of these dark warnings mattered. The colony existed in peaceful isolation, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space. 3,000 humans had made this place their home, building domed cities and growing food in underground farms. 10-year-old Minho ran as fast as his legs could carry him through the hydroponic gardens. Behind him, his 7-year-old sister Yuna chased after him, giggling and shouting for him to slow down. The artificial sun above them shone warm and bright, making the tomato plants grow tall and strong. "Minho, wait for me," Yuna called out, her black hair bouncing as she ran. Minho stopped next to a tower of green bean plants and grinned at his sister. "You're too slow, Yuna. I could run to the next dome before you catch me." "That's not fair. Your legs are longer." Yuna protested, but she was smiling too. Their parents worked nearby in the agricultural center. Dr. Jizu Park, their mother, studied soil samples under a microscope. She was trying to make the earth more fertile so they could grow even more food. Their father, Engineer Suk Kim, was fixing a water pump that brought clean water to all the plants. All around New Sol, other children played and learned and dreamed. In the education dome, 8-year-old Taehyun raised his hand to ask his teacher about the old stories from Earth. In the recreation center, 5-year-old Sumin built towers with colored blocks while her older brother Jiho helped her stack them higher and higher. The colony had 847 children in total. Each one was precious to their families and friends. Each one represented hope for humanity's future among the stars. They attended school, played games, helped their parents, and wondered what other worlds might be like. None of them knew that their existence had prevented wars. None of them understood that alien species spoke their names in hushed tones, not because they feared the children themselves, but because they feared what would happen if those children were ever hurt. The children of New Sol laughed and played under artificial suns, protected by a rule that was never written down but was more powerful than any law ever created. They were safe because the galaxy remembered what happened when human children were not safe. But memory fades. And some species are too young to remember the old lessons. Some species are about to learn why the first rule of the galaxy should never, ever be broken. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so loud. Voices shouted in dozens of languages while translation devices buzzed and sparked from overuse. At the center of it all stood Supreme Commander Thane, his massive form towering over the speaking podium like a mountain of black metal and rage. Thane belonged to the Roxa Federation, a species that looked like walking tanks. His people had thick gray skin covered in natural armor plates, and their red eyes burned like hot coals when they were angry. Right now, Thane was very angry. Look at them. Thane bellowed, his voice so loud it made the windows shake. Humans spread across our galaxy like a disease. They build colonies wherever they want. They make trade deals that benefit only themselves. And we sit here like frightened children, afraid to challenge them because of some old story. His armored fist crashed down on the podium so hard that cracks appeared in the metal surface. Several smaller species in the front rows jumped back in fear. The Pixari delegation, who were only 3 feet tall and looked like fuzzy teddy bears, huddled together and whispered nervously. Council leader Quill tried to restore order. She was from the Nereid Alliance, an aquatic people who lived in water-filled suits that made them look like walking fishbowls. Her voice came out in bubbles and electronic translation. Commander Thane, please remember that the protocols exist for very important reasons. The safety of all species depends on... Safety? Thane interrupted, his red eyes blazing brighter. What safety? Humans grow stronger every day while we grow weaker. They pretend to be peaceful explorers and traders, but I know what they really are. Warriors hiding behind smiles and handshakes. He activated a holographic display that showed the New Sol colony floating in space. The peaceful domes and gardens looked tiny and harmless in the vast darkness. But Thane pointed at them like they were weapons pointed at his heart. New Sol, he roared. They call it a farming colony, but look at its location. It sits right on the edge of Roxa space, perfectly positioned to spy on our military movements. Those biodomes could hide weapon systems. Those children could be trained soldiers in disguise. A gasp went up from the assembled delegates. Even suggesting that human children might be soldiers was considered terrible beyond words. The furry Pixari delegation began crying softly, their universal translators turning their squeaks into sobs. From the back of the chamber, a deep and ancient voice spoke like thunder rolling across mountains. Commander Thane. Elder Counselor Vrex stepped forward, his massive reptilian form casting shadows across the floor. His dark green scales were scarred from centuries of life, and his yellow eyes held memories that most species had forgotten. You speak of things you do not understand, Vrex continued, his forked tongue tasting the fear in the air. Your species is young. Only 200 years since you discovered space travel. My people have sailed between stars for over 3,000 years. We remember what you have never learned. Thane turned his burning gaze on the ancient reptile. Old lizard, your time is over. Your generation fills young minds with fear and superstition. The galaxy needs strong leadership, not bedtime stories about human monsters. Vrex's laugh was like rocks grinding together. Monsters? No, young fool. Humans are not monsters. Monsters are what they become when their children are threatened. My grandfather witnessed it. My great-grandfather survived it. The scars on my homeworld still glow in the dark from their weapons. Lies and legends. Thane spat. I've studied human military capability. Their ships are lightly armed. Their soldiers carry basic weapons. They're weak. Soft. They've grown comfortable and lazy living in peace. Other voices began to join the argument. The spider-like Arachnos delegation clicked their approval of Thane's words. The mechanical synthetics calculated probability matrices and declared human resistance minimal. Younger species who had never known war began to nod their heads in agreement. But the older species tried desperately to make them understand. The crystalline Eternals, who had existed since before most stars were born, pulsed with urgent warning lights. The gaseous nebula dancers changed colors rapidly, their way of screaming in terror. Ambassador Hannah Kim stood up slowly from the human delegation. Her face was pale but calm. Commander Thane, I beg you to reconsider. New Sol is home to families. Farmers. Children who play in gardens and dream of exploring the stars. If you attack them, you will. I will show the galaxy that humans bleed just like everyone else. Thane roared. No more will we bow to the myth of human invincibility. The debate raged for hours. Ancient species pleaded with passionate voices about old warnings and terrible consequences. They spoke of scars that would never heal and nightmares that still haunted their dreams. But their words fell on ears that had never heard the sound of human war drums. Finally, Council Leader Quill called for the vote. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of translation devices and the bubbling of her aquatic breathing apparatus. All in favor of Operation Clean Slate, a limited military action against the New Sol colony. Lights began to appear on the voting board. Red for yes, blue for no. The count climbed slowly, 400, 500, 600. Elder species voted blue in desperate blocks, but there were so many young species, so many who had never learned the old lessons. The final count appeared on the massive display, 847 votes in favor, 823 against. Thane smiled, showing teeth like broken glass. The Ruxa Federation will lead this operation. Within 1 week, the myth of human protection will be shattered forever. Elder Councillor Vrex closed his ancient eyes and whispered a prayer in his native tongue. Across the galaxy, other old ones felt a chill in their bones. The vote had been cast. The die was thrown. The first rule of the galaxy was about to be broken. And the galaxy was about to remember why that rule existed in the first place. The artificial morning sun began to glow softly through the great glass dome that covered New Sol colony. It was designed to match the rhythm of Earth's sun, rising slowly to wake the families inside with gentle light instead of harsh alarms. 8-year-old Jiho sat at the kitchen table, his dark hair still messy from sleep, helping his 6-year-old sister Sumin with her number problems. 7 plus 9 equals. Sumin counted on her fingers, her tongue sticking out in concentration. 16. That's right. Jiho grinned and patted her head. You're getting really good at math, Sumin. Their mother, Dr. Yoonji Lee, moved around the kitchen making breakfast. She wore her white medical coat because she worked at the colony hospital, helping people when they got sick or hurt. The smell of rice and soup filled the air, making the small apartment feel warm and safe. Mom, Sumin said, bouncing in her chair with excitement, can we go see the new butterfly habitat after school today? Teacher Han said they got butterflies from 3 different planets. Dr. Lee smiled and ruffled her daughter's soft black hair. Of course, sweetheart. But only if you finish all your homework first. She looked at Jiho with kind but serious eyes. And you need to help your sister with her science project about plant growth. Can you do that for me? Yes, Mom, Jiho nodded. He liked helping Sumin learn new things. She was small but very smart, and she always asked interesting questions that made him think harder about everything. Their father, Captain Dong-Hyun Lee, came through the front door wearing his security uniform. He worked to keep the colony safe, walking around the outer walls and checking all the systems that protected them from the dangers of space. He was tired from his night patrol, but he smiled when he saw his family eating breakfast together. Good morning, my little stars, he said, kissing both children on the tops of their heads. Are you ready for another day of learning and growing? Dad, will you tell us about Earth tonight? Sumin asked. About the real butterflies that lived in forests. Captain Lee's eyes grew soft and distant. Yes, little one. I'll tell you about the forests where your grandmother played when she was your age. Across the colony, other families were starting their day in the same peaceful way. In the education center, Ms. Soyoung-han prepared her classroom for 30 eager students. She arranged books about ancient Earth history on her desk and checked the holographic display that would show pictures of old cities and forests. 9-year-old Taehyun arrived early, as he always did. He loved learning about the past, especially stories about the great cities where millions of humans had lived together. Ms. Han, he said, raising his hand before class even started, did people really build cities so tall they touched the clouds? Ms. Han laughed softly. Even taller than that, Taehyun. Some buildings were so high that people needed special elevators just to reach the top floors. Wow. Taehyun's eyes grew wide. I want to see Earth someday. I want to walk where our great-grandparents walked. Maybe you will, Ms. Han said gently. Maybe all of you will get to visit our home planet when you're older. The morning passed in the normal rhythm of colony life. Children attended classes and played during recess. Parents worked in the medical center, the engineering bays, and the farming domes. The hydroponic gardens grew green and healthy under artificial sunlight. The air recycling systems hummed quietly, keeping everyone breathing clean oxygen. Nobody noticed the small objects that appeared at the edge of their solar system. The colony's sensors were designed to watch for asteroids and space debris, not for military ships that were trying to hide. At exactly 14:30 colony time, just after lunch when many children were taking their afternoon naps, the sky above New Sol exploded into fire. The orbital defense platforms that protected the colony lasted exactly 7 minutes. These were small automated systems designed to destroy incoming rocks and space junk, not military weapons. They fired their tiny lasers at the massive rocks of battleships and were destroyed so quickly that most colonists never even knew they existed. The communication arrays went dark first. The big dishes that let New Sol talk to other human colonies were turned to metal vapor by focused energy beams. Then the escape pod bays were targeted with surgical precision. The small ships that were meant to carry people to safety in emergencies exploded one by one like deadly fireworks. Captain Lee was in the command center when the attack began. His hands flew over the control panels as he tried to send out a distress signal, tried to activate the evacuation procedures, tried to do anything to save his people. But the communication systems were already gone. His desperate evacuation order reached only a few dozen people in the command dome before the power went out entirely. Across the colony, emergency alarms began to wail. Parents grabbed their children and ran for the underground shelters that had been built for asteroid strikes and system failures. The shelters were strong and safe, designed to protect people from accidents. They were not designed to protect people from war. As the artificial sun set and darkness came to New Sol, explosions shook the ground like earthquakes. In the deepest shelter, Jiho held his little sister Sumin close to his chest while she cried in terror. Above them, their parents and all the other adults fought desperately with mining tools and construction equipment, trying to defend their families with anything they could find. But the Roxa had come prepared for war against a military target. They had brought weapons designed to crack planets and melt mountains. The bombardment continued all through the night. When the real sun rose the next morning, New Sol was silent. The biodomes were shattered glass. The gardens were ash. The laughter of 847 children would never again echo through the halls where they had learned and played and dreamed of touching the stars. The first rule of the galaxy had been broken. And somewhere in the depths of space, humanity felt its children die. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo Park sat alone in his private office aboard the massive starship Incheon. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the distant sound of crew members working in the corridors outside. On his desk sat a cup of cold tea that he had forgotten to drink hours ago. The communication device on his wall beeped softly. Park looked up from the report he was reading about mineral deposits in the Centauri system. It was probably another routine message about trade schedules or diplomatic meetings. He pressed the button to accept the transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the face of Captain Minji Kang from the border patrol station near New Sol. But something was wrong. Captain Kang's face was pale, and his eyes looked like those of a man who had seen something terrible. Admiral Park, Kang's voice shook as he spoke. I have to report a complete loss of contact with New Sol colony. Long-range sensors show massive structural damage to all habitat domes. Park felt something cold settle in his stomach. Captain, please clarify. Are you reporting an accident? Asteroid impact? System failure? Kang closed his eyes for a moment before answering. No, sir. Weapon signatures detected. Multiple battleship-class energy discharges. The colony was attacked, Admiral. Deliberately destroyed. The words hit Park like a physical blow. He gripped the edge of his desk so hard his knuckles turned white. Survivors? None detected, sir. No life signs. No communication signals. No escape pods made it out of the system. Kang's voice dropped to a whisper. Admiral, the preliminary casualty count shows 847 children were living on New Sol. Park stared at the hologram for a long moment. The universe seemed to have gone completely silent around him. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded strange and far away, even to himself. 847 children. Yes, sir. All dead. Yes, sir. Park's hands began to tremble. Not with fear, but with something much deeper and more dangerous. Something that had been sleeping in humanity's heart for generations, waiting for this exact moment to wake up. Captain Kang, send immediate recall orders to every human vessel in your sector. All ships are to return to Sol immediately. No exceptions. Sir? All ships? But what about the mining operations? The research missions? The diplomatic? All ships, Captain. Send the recall code Broken Nest. Every human captain will understand what that means. Kang's eyes went wide. Every human military officer knew the Broken Nest Protocol, though none had ever expected to use it. It meant that human children had been killed by alien forces. It meant that humanity was going to war. Admiral, are you certain? Once that code goes out, there's no taking it back. Park looked directly into the camera, and Kang took an involuntary step backward from what he saw in the Admiral's eyes. Send it now, Captain. Send it to every human ship, station, and colony in known space. Humanity is coming home. The transmission ended, leaving Park alone with his rage and his grief. He sat in the darkness of his office for exactly 1 minute, allowing himself to feel the full weight of what had happened. 847 children. Sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, the future of his species, murdered while they slept in their beds. Then he stood up and began to give orders that would change the galaxy forever. Across human space, the Broken Nest signal traveled faster than light itself, jumping from relay to relay until it reached every human vessel among the stars. The response was immediate and absolute. Captain Hyunwoo Jung was studying mineral samples in his laboratory aboard the exploration ship Busan when the signal reached him. He was a scientist, not a soldier, and he had spent 5 years exploring distant galaxies to find new worlds where humans could build peaceful colonies. When he read the Broken Nest code, everything changed. Jung walked calmly to his ship's cargo bay, where sealed containers had sat untouched for his entire voyage. His crew had always wondered what was inside those containers, but Jung had told them they were emergency supplies that would hopefully never be needed. He opened the first container with his command codes. Inside, sleek black weapons hummed to life, systems that no alien intelligence had ever seen or imagined. The Busan was no longer an exploration vessel. It was a weapon of war, disguised as a peaceful research ship. Set course for Seoul, Jung ordered his surprised crew. Maximum speed. We're going home. All across the galaxy, the same scene played out on thousands of human ships. Research vessels abandoned their studies of distant stars. Mining ships left half-finished operations in asteroid fields. Diplomatic missions cut their meetings short and departed without explanation. Ambassador Hannah Kim walked into the Galactic Council chambers one last time. The alien delegates were still celebrating their vote from the day before, still congratulating Commander Thane on his bold action against human expansion. She stood at the podium where so many species had spoken of peace and cooperation. When she began to speak, her voice was calm but carried an undertone that made every alien in the chamber suddenly remember old warnings their grandparents had whispered. Honored delegates, she said quietly, you have made the gravest error in galactic history. You have killed our children. You have broken the one law that kept you safe from what we truly are. Elder Counselor Rex rose from his seat, his ancient eyes wide with horror. Ambassador Kim, surely there can be negotiations, reparations. Humanity is coming home, Kim interrupted. Not to talk. Not to negotiate. Not to forgive. We are coming home to remember who we were before we chose to be civilized. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving behind centuries of diplomatic relations and peaceful coexistence. Behind her, the alien delegates began to understand that their galaxy was about to become a much more dangerous place. In the depths of space, human ships converged on Sol like wolves returning to the pack. Ships that had seemed harmless revealed weapon systems that defied alien understanding. Hulls that had appeared to be simple metal showed themselves to be advanced military armor. The galaxy was about to learn why the first rule had existed, and why it should never have been broken. The darkness around Earth's solar system began to glow with the light of 50,000 ships. They appeared from hyperspace like stars being born, each one taking its place in a formation so perfect it looked like a single living organism. At the center of this massive fleet, the flagship Sol's Vengeance gleamed like a silver knife pointed at the heart of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Kyung-Soo Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the greatest war fleet humanity had ever assembled. These were not just military vessels. Every human ship that could fly had answered the call. Research ships bristling with hidden weapons. Merchant vessels that had dropped their peaceful disguises to reveal armored hulls and gun ports. Mining ships carrying tools that could crack planets. Admiral, his communications officer reported, all ships are in position. 50,000 vessels ready for your orders. Park nodded slowly. In his hand, he held a small photograph of 2 children laughing in a garden. His nephew Jiho and niece Simin, the children of his sister who had lived on New Seoul. They would never laugh again. They would never grow up to explore the stars or fall in love or have children of their own. Signal the fleet, Park said quietly. We move as one. Target, Roxa Space. Objective, Justice. The human fleet moved through space like a dark tide, faster than any alien force had ever traveled. But when they reached Roxa territory, something unexpected happened. Instead of attacking military bases and weapon platforms, the human ships went directly to civilian worlds. Captain Hyun-Woo Jung, the former scientist who now commanded a warship disguised as a research vessel, positioned his fleet around the Roxa colony of Vex Prime. Below them, millions of gray-skinned Roxa families lived in crystal cities, unaware that death had arrived in their sky. Jung activated the colony's communication systems. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. Attention Roxa civilians of Vex Prime. This is Captain Jung of the Human Defense Fleet. You have 36 hours to evacuate all children and non-combatants from this world. We will provide safe passage and protection during evacuation. On the colony's surface, panic spread like wildfire. Roxa families ran through the streets, grabbing their children and whatever belongings they could carry. But human ships descended from orbit, not to attack but to help. Human soldiers, their faces hidden behind combat helmets, guided Roxa children onto transport ships with gentle hands. A young Roxa mother named Crix clutched her baby as a human soldier helped her aboard an evacuation ship. Why? She whispered in broken standard language. Why help us when your children are dead? The human soldier was quiet for a moment before answering. Because children are sacred. All children. Even when their governments are not. The same scene played out across dozens of Roxa worlds. Human forces evacuated every Roxa colony that had children, moving families to neutral worlds far from the coming storm. Alien species watched in amazement as humanity showed mercy to the offspring of their enemies while preparing to destroy everything else. Then the methodical destruction began. Roxa weapons factories exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Military bases were turned to melted metal and glass. Government buildings collapsed as human weapons carved through their defenses like hot knives through ice. But the attacks were surgical, precise, designed to destroy only military and government targets. Supreme Commander Thane tried to rally his forces from his command bunker on the Roxa homeworld. His red eyes blazed with fury as he screamed orders at his subordinates. Fight them. Show these weak humans what Roxa warriors can do. But his warriors could not fight what they could not understand. Human weapons fired from impossible distances. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. In space battles that lasted only minutes, entire Roxa fleets were reduced to debris. Thane's bunker shook as explosions got closer and closer. Finally, the roof was peeled away like opening a can, and human soldiers dropped into his command center. Thane raised his weapon to fight, but a stunner beam dropped him to the ground before he could fire. 18 days after the human fleet had left Sol, the Roxa Federation ceased to exist. Their military was destroyed, their government dissolved, their weapons turned to scrap metal. But their children lived, protected on neutral worlds by human guards who would die before allowing harm to come to them. Admiral Park stood in the judgment chamber where Commander Thane sat in chains. The Roxa leader's armor was gone, replaced by simple prison clothes. His red eyes no longer blazed with arrogance. Now they held only confusion and fear. I don't understand, Thane whispered, staring at a holographic display that showed New Sol's children playing in their gardens just hours before his attack. Your species could have destroyed us completely. You could have killed every Roxa in the galaxy. Why didn't you? Park's voice was as cold as the space between stars. Because we are not you, Commander. Children are sacred to us. All children, regardless of what species they belong to. You murdered 847 innocent souls, including my nephew Jiho and my niece Sumin. For that crime, you will face justice. But we will not become monsters to punish monsters. From the observation deck, Elder Councilor Vrex watched the proceedings with ancient, sad eyes. Other alien delegates whispered questions, trying to understand what they had witnessed. How? Asked the crystalline representative from the Valerian delegation. How did humans show such restraint while displaying such power? Vrex's voice carried the weight of centuries. Because you finally see what my people learned long ago. Humans don't just love their own children. They view all young as sacred. When you attack human children, you don't just face their military. You awaken the protective instinct of an entire species, and that makes them the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The old reptile looked out at the stars where human ships now patrolled every sector. But they are also the most moral force in the galaxy. They could rule through fear, but they choose to protect through strength. New laws were written in the months that followed. The Haven Protocols, carved not in paper or digital files but in quantum steel that could never be destroyed or changed. Every child of every species was now under human protection. Human fleets patrolled the galaxy, not as conquerors but as guardians. The first rule of the galaxy had been broken once. It would never be broken again. And in the depths of space, where New Sol had once orbited a distant star, a memorial stood in the darkness. 847 names were written in light that would shine forever, reminding the galaxy that some things are too precious to lose, and some crimes too terrible to forgive.